Hey, my friends, if you are looking for a faster, a better way to grow and scale your online business, you very likely do not need another course or to be reading more books about how to grow your business. What you need instead is a personalized, cohesive growth strategy for your business, along with one-on-one coaching and group coaching, support and accountability to help you every step of the way. Well, that's exactly what my Accelerator coaching program delivers for you. Accelerator is an intimate 12-month rolling open enrollment. So it's ongoing open enrollment, personalized coaching program, and mastermind experience for established online course creators and coaches who want to take the guesswork out of optimizing and grow towards a profitable 7-figure plus business without more anxiety, without more stress, and hours spent in front of the computer. Okay. Accelerator is about thinking differently and bigger about your business, about your team, your funnels, your ads, your vision, et cetera, so that you can create more profit, more impact with less hustle. So Accelerator is application only. And again, this is rolling, ongoing, open enrollment. So if you want to learn more and apply, just go to rickmulready.com/accelerator. Hey, my friend, welcome to the Art of Online Business podcast. My name is Rick Mulready, and I'm an online business coach. I'm an ads expert, and most importantly, I'm a dad. And this show is where we help established online course creators and coaches create more profit, more impact with less hustle. All right, let's get into it. Erica in India, welcome back to the podcast. How are we doing today? We were just talking about Mercury Retrograde and things going wrong. What's happening with you all?
Yeah. The interesting thing for me is that I think Mercury Retrograde can put people in that place of like, this is why everything went wrong. And Sometimes it's a part of it because some wires are getting crossed. But at the same time, I think it can represent an opportunity to slow down and be a little bit more aware, a little more mindful, a little bit more intentional. So that can help to minimize some of the confusion that can happen or the uh-ohs that can kind of come up. So, I like to try to find a way that it can be beneficial. So I'm kind of looking at it that way.
Yeah. And Facebook and Instagram were down earlier this week from when we were recording this. And you all host a membership that's not in the Facebook group. So we'll talk about that as well. And so like I said, welcome back because you're both previous guests separately on the show here. Erica, we talked about diversity, quality, inclusion, how to be incorporating that more into your business. We can have a whole podcast just like you all do, talking about that. I don't even want to call it one topic, but broad,
all the offshoots of it,
subject,
how everything can come through that filter. So yeah. And then India, we chatted about here in the show, and I'll link up the specific podcast links for the episodes in the show notes for today's episode. But India, we're talking on the marketing side.
Yeah. How to about doing it differently.
Yeah. Doing it differently. So today, I wanted to have you both back on to be talking about continuing with our membership series that we're doing here on the podcast, specifically talking about onboarding and really your recommendations, how you all have done it in your membership, really fostering a safe space, an emotional safe space during the onboarding process for a membership, which hopefully results in a deeper connection, both with you all and the members of the community and the community members themselves. So where do we even start with this? Because I know that you've both done a lot with your membership. So why don't we start there? What is the membership and why did you start to incorporate some of these, do we call them strategies? I don't even know. It sounds
approaches,
so like,
we're not attached to the word.
Yeah. So what is the membership? Why don't we start there?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to take you back to the very beginning of the membership, which was when it was a Facebook group. We started it as a Facebook community, and we really designed it to be able to provide a space for people to integrate their values into their visibility, to dig into what their values even are. I think underneath that, we had the intention of wanting people to be more of who they really are, and let go of society's shoulds of how they need to show up in the world, do business, and then also being able to take those things and figure out, how do we now want to look at supporting others and creating more equity in business as an action and not just a conversation. We have the conversations there that people don't have anywhere else. And what I mean by that is talking about sexuality, social injustices, religion, race, power. And at the same time, we also turn those conversations into actions that we can integrate into our lives and into our businesses. And I'm sure Erica has some thoughts about the Facebook days, but I think that you hear so much about starting an online community, and so many communities at that time were Facebook groups. So that's kind of where we began.
Right. And a lot of people, I think, did Facebook because, low hanging fruit, in the sense that if that's where people already are, you meet them there. But some of the things that we were encountering, and I don't think that this was by any means something that was exclusive to us, but it was the worry of emotional safety, the worry of the conversations that we're having, sometimes feeling sensitive and knowing that, like, if we start talking about something, then all of a sudden you're going to get an ad for it. And it's like, I don't know that this is something I want to have to worry about. I don't want the algorithm to now try to, wrap itself around, me having a discussion around trauma or the processing of things. And so it became pretty clear pretty quickly that Facebook was not going to be the place to stay. And the reason that I'm so happy that we did that is that we were able to not only shift our platform from a place of emotional safety, but we were able to purposefully and intentionally create something that wasn't just about, I'm leaving a social media platform. And it was more about, what do we want to create and how can we take ownership of it, versus trying to force our square peg into a round hole.
Yeah. Yeah. Did making that change to a quote, another external platform outside of Facebook, did that change how you, I don't know. Did it change anything as far as the onboarding goes and introducing into a community?
It changed everything.
Oh, yeah. Really? Every single thing.
And we are so happy it could. I mean, we both started our entrepreneurial careers with in-person businesses, not virtual businesses or online businesses. And so we felt like offering our community as something on Facebook or online period was just already kind of different for us. And we instantly knew in that process that some of the things that we really enjoyed about meeting people in person were getting lost. Being able to hear someone's voice, being able to say hello, or watch them, or whatever that accessibility looks like, of those additional emotional cues are just lost when you only have text. And so being able to leave the Facebook platform, and in a way, I'd like to say we kind of created our own social media network in the way that it functions, allowed us to do video and integrate that into the onboarding. It allowed us to do things in a more linear step-by-step way and make it exciting and fun, almost like an online challenge.
Right. And I think there's a lot to be said. And I think, Rick, you understand this well, that there's really something to be said about creating something because this is what you want, versus I'm going to do it because this is what's here and I'm just going to use whatever's in the box. Because I think anytime we do that, you still end up creating somebody else's outcome and not your own. So I think that there's really something to be said about that.
You also have a heck of a lot more quote unquote ownership of it, such that, I mean, all technology goes down, something happens, but when it almost feels like a little bit different when a platform like Facebook goes down for so many hours. All their properties went down, and it's like, hey, wait, that's my community over there. That's where I'm trying to create this amazing space and experience and community for my people, if you will. But yet I can't speak to them right now.
And there's also the concern for us that we've had since the beginning of censorship. How vulnerable, how authentic are people willing to show up and be and use their own words? And if that includes cursing or whatever else may be there, to do that on the Facebook platform, because you risk people flagging you, you risk the algorithm seeing you using certain words. Even if we're having a very inclusive and productive conversation about white supremacy, that word in itself can do something to you within Facebook's algorithm, which is also connected to Instagram's algorithm, not just in what ads it shows you, but also are you flagged as being someone who is using hate speech, even if that speech is being used to explain a term. And so we wanted people to be able to speak freely, and we also wanted to be able to do the same ourselves.
Sure.
And that was not possible on the platform. Now, the beauty is we actually left, and it wasn't like a cold stop leave. We transitioned our community and gave them some time to get acclimated to a new space while we still had the Facebook group open. But we moved over to something called Mighty Networks.
Yeah.
And within that platform, just like many other platforms that have the ability to have a course, we built out our onboarding as a course. And we didn't just start building that. We took a lot of time behind the scenes before we made the shift to really set intentions of how do we want to bring people in? How do we want them to feel? First, we asked them, how do they want to feel? And then also, how do we not want them to feel? And they got to share how they don't want to feel as well.
Right. Meaning you were asking them within the membership? Okay.
Yeah. Actually, part of that process is we had built out a survey where they got to pick the top 3 emotions that they want to feel, top 3 emotions that they don't want to feel, and then the number 1 emotion that they want to feel, and the number 1 that they absolutely do not ever want to feel in our space. And that let us prioritize not just what we were doing, but the energy behind how we were doing it.
And I think that that's important because, one, I don't know that I've ever been in a space before that was actually asked of you and that the answer made a difference in anything. Right. And that the person wasn't simply doing it for themselves. But I think that when you dig into kind of some of those kind of like psychographics of like, what is it that makes you the type of person that you are, and why are you here, and what do you want to get out of this? How do you want to feel? As you get that helps you to connect in a different way. And that helped to inform the choices that we made. Because one of the things that I want to make sure, if it hasn't been explicitly communicated, that it is explicitly stated that when we made our shift from Facebook to Mighty Networks, when we shifted our onboarding, when we shifted how people come in, when we shifted the way interaction went based on the responses that we got, it was never about us. It was always about them.
Yeah, that's been a big theme among many of the talks I've been having with people as part of this membership series on the show here, where I know, at least for me, and frankly, a lot of my students, especially in Accelerator, many of us feel like we have to be leading the conversation. We have to be leading the community. We have to be pushing it along, quote unquote, if you will. And it's about the members, but it's almost like it's contingent on the business owner or the membership owner. Whereas in all these conversations it keeps coming up, exactly what you just said, Erica, is like, it's not about us, it's about the community, and the community's there supporting one another. We get to do our part in creating that safe environment, creating with intention of what we want it to be. But it's for the members, and the members are creating this community with each other.
Right. And I think it's a paradigm shift of taking it from I am the leader here to I am facilitating this space for the outcomes that you are here to feel and the type of impact that you want to make. And for us, that's been a cornerstone. Now, I know that everybody's space is not going to be maybe as impact driven as ours, or it's not going to be based on the same types of content or kind of themes. But being able to kind of remind yourself that this is not about how much you know, how much you can do, how you are showing your authority, and you're able to shift that to being more about, I'm hoping to foster this space. I want to be a part of these conversations. I want to interact with you, and I want to learn from you in the same way that I hope that I have something to offer to you. I think it's a very different way of positioning ourselves and allowing people to understand that they're a part of co-creation, because that is a huge thing that definitely was there for us from the word go. And again, it differentiated spaces that I've been as a member, and why I didn't want to create something that was just about, this is really you creating what you wanted and what you needed. This was never about your members. We knew that that was not what we wanted, and we've been able to honor that consistently.
Yeah.
So sorry, go ahead, India. Yeah.
No, I was just going to piggyback off of Erica and say that word community stands out to me. And I think that we knew before we even started building anything, figuring out when we wanted to roll it out, anything like that, of this extension of our business, that we wanted it to be a community, and we would refer to it as that. Even though there would be workshops, there'd be coaching and consulting available inside of it, hot seats, you name it. That the most important thing for us was that people continue to connect with each other outside of those things that we are hosting and facilitating as leaders. And that informs so many decisions as well.
So, well, and that's what it's called. It's called Pause in the Play, the community. So it's right there in the name. So my audience loves tactical, like here are the things that we can try in order to accomplish X, Y, or Z. So
this is India's love language. So
now
we have the right person in the room, right?
So with that in mind, India, you want to be very intentional about the onboarding process, to be able to create that safe environment, to be able to create that deeper connection with the community. You ask them how you want to feel. How do you not want to feel? You created kind of a mini course, if you will. So what does that look like? What does the onboarding process look like that's able to foster that type of connection and feeling of safety?
You know, I thought before we started recording this that I would actually start that with our Start Here challenge. But my instinct, my gut, my heart is saying that process actually starts with how we talk about the community. When we talk about it, it starts with when they finally land on the sales page for the community, how it is mentioned there, and how we explicitly state, here's what we talk about. We are talking about challenging things that you can't talk about anywhere else. And it's a safe space to do that. And our community is free of know-it-alls. It's free of people who feel like they are there yet, or there is a there, and I think that messaging already repels some people and attracts other people. And that's so important, because I think who is in the room can shape the vibe of the room. As I say, one bad apple can spoil the bunch, so to speak. But I
want to pause you there. I want to pause you because we do our pause and play thing on ours. And I wanted to pause you only because you are correct. It does start on the page, but it also starts with the people that share about their experiences in the room before they even get to the sales page, because we have members that what they've experienced in our space with fellow members has shifted and shaped how they show up in their businesses, how they show up in their lives. And when they are transparent with their stories and they are sharing, then they are letting people know this is what has been possible for me. And being able to see that somebody is simply laying out, hey, this is what I've experienced. I'm not even really looking for anything from this, but this is what I have had happen for me. And this was a big piece of that. That to me is a huge piece of it. Cause this is somebody that like, yeah, I'm just talking about my life and my experiences, but this is what's been a part of it. And then hopefully it'll trigger them to go over to the sales page. But before they even got there, they're like, what is this magical unicorn of a space that you mentioned? Because I'm not used to this.
And that type of person is usually, maybe not all the time, but usually going to attract similar type of person, personality, values, et cetera.
Absolutely. And they're incredibly transparent about what their experiences are and what they're learning. And they're collaborating with each other about that as well. We've seen some beautiful collaborations come out of the community. So yes to everything that Erica just said. Getting down to the tangible, once you click that, join now or sign up button, one of the things that you'll find is we leave our card open. And so we intentionally don't want to bring people in with any type of energy of urgency or scarcity. And so while some people may feel that open and closed cart guarantees you more sales, we made the executive decision on our side that even if it potentially hurts our sales, according to industry standards.
There was a collective gasp, by the way, by thousands of people right now.
I know that there was. I cannot imagine it.
I'm sure. We don't launch and we don't close our card.
We don't like the word. We don't even like the word launch. The word launch makes us itchy. And I think there's something to be said about, if you are launching and let's say it's a coaching program and you literally can only take 8 people. That is real, scarcity from a sense of like, if I have 1 seat left, I have 1 seat left. Yeah. But to have a space that we are not capping how many people can come in at a given time, that's faux urgency to say, if you don't join now, you're going to miss out. It's like, but why is now different from tomorrow or any other day if that's the game that you're playing? Now, I think that there's always that sense of like starting now is always, the best place to start if you didn't start yesterday. But if we're going to put that there, then there needs to be a real reason why, or you start to get to that place of like, we are playing with people's, mental health to have these types of gymnastics that we want to do with them. That's not always the best integrity to play that up if it's not real and it's only for sales.
Sure.
Absolutely. And what I think about that decision, I think about if you've ever been running late for a meeting or something like that, back when most people were doing things in person, right? You arrive and you're already like a little sweaty under your armpits. You're super nervous, like anything might come out of your mouth because you already have that I was late, or in this case, that urgency energy behind it. And now you're bringing that energy into the space. You're bringing it into the meeting. You're bringing it into what you say while people are sharing very real and very vulnerable things. And so we made the decision that the protecting of the energy of our space was more important than being able to launch an open and closed cart. And once you make that decision to join, then you go through a process where in the purchasing, we don't have bump offers. We're not upselling you to make last minute decisions that you might regret. We also have it to where you can come and leave at any time. So you are not locked into a year unless you choose to be. You can do month to month, and there's no monthly minimum on that month to month. And then once you actually have entered the network, which is a private network, we made that decision so that none of the content there can be searchable by the public or seen by the public. What happens in the community stays in the community, like Las Vegas. You then go into immediately being in our Start Here challenge, not into the main network or any trainings or educational material, but you immediately go into something that we call our Start Here challenge. And we call it a challenge because we intentionally wanted to make it be light and fun and very welcoming.
And so what is it's a series of, and I remember going through it when I joined, but take us through what does that look like it's a video series, but you also there's like activities and stuff like that. So talk about that. Cause when I remember going through, I was like, wow, this is really smart and unlike anything I'd seen before.
The interesting thing was, I remember when we were recording those videos during COVID and having to kind of preface, like, we're not being reckless, like we're in each other's bubble
sitting
here.
next to each other.
Right. And because for us, it was important that our Start Here challenge did include some like actual video interaction. We wanted people to see our faces and hear our voices so that they didn't think that they were kind of being, dumped off into a space that like, hey, go talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Good luck. Bye. And so we felt like it was really important for them to have that moment of connecting with us and to be able to lay out like, great, you're here. Let's go ahead and kind of, assuage any nervousness you may have. Let's manage any expectations you have of yourself of kind of, how do I do anything in here? I don't know where to start. I'm not sure what I can or I can't do. I don't know how to, I literally don't know how to operate it because I'm used to Facebook. And so for us, it was really important to not only give people that know-how of, this is how to navigate the space. This is where certain things are, but also this is how to interact. This is how to have conversations with your fellow members, and really setting the stage for what we hoped would be their experience, but also how they were a part of co-creating that together. And we really wanted to embed those pieces of our values of how we created the space and why we created it for them, being there from the very beginning, because we didn't want it to be like, oh yeah, by the way, this is kind of the thing. So we really, and that was again, another one of the reasons for having the videos there and letting it feel a little bit more personalized so that it wasn't, okay, it's just text and I don't know what to do and it's scary in here. And I just, it was really just trying to take that edge off of that initial step of like, we're doing this together. You're not alone.
And in doing that, what was number one, that's, to my knowledge and from my experience over the years, I don't see a lot of membership people doing that.
No.
Onboarding people in that way. How do you think that is creating an emotionally safe space for people once they join? Is it simply, I don't mean to oversimplify it, but is it like describing what this is and what this isn't in the membership? Or is there more to it?
And there's a little more to it. I think that there are strategic reminders of, we're all human here. We're going to make mistakes. And there's what we do after we make that mistake that matters more than the mistake itself. Right. There's a lot of little pieces that we've included in there. And I think I would love to hear Erica's thoughts on that. But I do think it is so much bigger because it's like certain things, it would be easy to feel like, oh, that's common sense. You don't call somebody, a but when you have people from all different walks of life and they're living in all different geographic locations, they have different religious backgrounds, different parts of their gender identity, their sexual identity, their ethnicity, you name it. There is so much room once you start talking about what is your normal, what lived experiences you've had, wanting to incorporate more inclusivity into your business, to say things that we may think are fine or normal everyday phrases or words that actually could be harmful to someone else. And so I think that it's even more important in that type of space to build it in such a way that it's not necessarily 100% focusing only on how do we prevent mistakes, right? But how do we actually create a space to where it is okay if you make a mistake, if you make amends, if you take the time when you make that mistake to listen to why it was a mistake and then course correct.
And I think we are fortunate to have a space and members where there has been a lot of empathy fostered. There are people that are like, I don't know if I'm going to say this the most eloquent way, but I also don't want to not say it because that doesn't feel like that's the right choice either. And they dive in and they're willing to have those kinds of conversations. And the interesting thing is, I think anybody that has heard us before knows that India and I talk about values a lot. Rick is probably like, here's these values again.
Yes.
The interesting thing is, like, one of the cornerstones for me is imperfect allyship. And with Pause on the Play, we also talk a lot about, reconsidering your normal on all fronts. And I think that when you have values that reflect what matters to you, it's a lot easier to create an environment where those things are considered a standard of how things are done. And so you don't have to think, do people understand this? Do they know this? People know that if I say imperfect allyship, I've talked about it so much that they know that it's not just a tag, that it's really about action. And they know for a fact that the more and more I talk about reconsidering your normal, it is having that type of dialogue that is like, well, this isn't something I always understand, or this isn't something that I thought I had access to, or that I could do it this way. And being able to really just have that cornerstone of even just those two concepts really opens people up to being able to have dialogue around things that they aren't talking about regularly in other spaces. And I feel very confident to say that because I know I've had some of those conversations in other spaces and people have been like, oh, wait, what just happened in here? She said what? Right. So having a space that we can do that really does open people up in a way that they take that with them back out into the world of like, oh, yeah, we're not talking about this stuff. Why? I don't want to be silent about these things. And it's not about it being bad. It's just different.
Yeah.
Well, and can I say that I'm curious to hear your thoughts about it as well, Rick, because we have different spheres and different lived experiences. But I feel like most people are told not to talk about those things. And you absolutely can't do that if you're a business owner.
Yeah.
And here's a space to do it. So
yeah. Yeah. I mean, my problem with it is when leaders of a community, for example, or a membership or what have you, are saying like, hey, we're not going to talk about political issues in here when it's not a political issue at all. It's just a human being issue.
Right.
That's a huge problem. I do have a big problem when it's like, wait a minute. No, that's not what this is about. And I think that there's a ton of opportunity still to create. I mean, we're talking about creating safe places and safe communities within our business. I think there's a ton of opportunity for this, as I like to call it, the online bubble, the online space, for us to do more of that. And I think that there was maybe some starts and stops along the way over the past year and a half or so, but I still think there's a long way to go, honestly.
I mean, I think there's a long way to go, but part of that is, as we're discussing safe spaces, it's just first kind of pausing to acknowledge that a safe space is not a space that you have said out loud, hey, I am putting my stake in the ground. This space is safe. That's not what it means. And it's really trying to create a space where other people are able to operate in a way that they feel safe and that they're able to communicate if that's not happening. And so I think if you're moving through this type of shift or evolution, that there does need to be an opportunity to acknowledge, if you say you want to create a safe space, what does that actually mean? And not just what does it mean to you, but what does it mean for your people?
Yeah.
So when I think about that, an intangible standpoint, I relate it back to that survey, right? Mm-hmm. What emotions on the emotional wheel, which is like a tool in psychology, did your people say are the emotions that make them feel safe? Because those are the ones that you need to infuse into everything you say and everything that you do as much as possible in your space. And if you're deviating from that, then you need to be intentional about why. And when I look at it for us, as we started to lay that out, some of the emotions that came up that people wanted to feel was supported. They wanted to feel inspired. And the number one thing that they did not want to feel is judged. So that is one of the things that we absolutely have a no in our space is any energy of judging someone else for their choices, their decisions, their experiences is not okay. You can ask questions to further understand. You can keep the dialogue going. But if it's coming from a place of being judgmental, it's not allowed. And we're very explicit about that and how we bring people in, both in the video content and also from a tangible standpoint. We have a part of our Start Here challenge that is where our community manifesto lives. And it explicitly says, this is what we don't do here.
Are you, with that manifesto, are you also touching on those things that are within the manifesto throughout the other videos as well? Or is it more so only there? I don't know the answer.
Know the answer to.
I was just going to say, I don't know the answer, but I do know the answer as I'm asking the question. Yeah.
The listeners don't know the answer.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think anytime you create something like that and it only lives in one place and it's not echoed and mirrored back in other places, you're doing your energy and this entity a disservice. So it should constantly be reiterated. It should show up in other places. You should notice the kind of ping-ponging back and forwards of things. That should absolutely happen so that it never feels like, oh, you said this here, but you don't say this anywhere else, let alone actually do that thing. And so it should be in all the places.
Yes. And the beauty is, I think that it is in all the places, and also do not skip on making it be an explicit place that you can point to where there's both video content about it and written content about it in one unified place, because that is a part of being able, and I know you'll go into this with Diana Tower, who supported us with some of our boarding. It's part of your community manager and supporting them of being able to say, I removed this post, or I edited this post, or I changed what section of the community it shows up in, or what hashtag is with it because of this thing over here, this manifesto. So it never feels like it's a personal decision, but hey, we have this manifesto, or we have this community guideline, and this is why I made this decision.
Doing this work also from a, I'll go here, from a numbers perspective, from a data perspective, from a churn rate and retention perspective. How do you all feel that this is affecting retention overall in a membership?
That's such a good question. And we have discovered that for us, the people that do not make it through the Start Here challenge do not typically stay within the community. And the people that do have been with us from the beginning or have come later on and do not leave. Like, they're like, this is home and I am here. Like, this is my mental health, my friends, my everything. This is the place I feel like I belong and I am not going anywhere. I'm curious,
the people that don't make it through the challenge, the Start Here challenge,
they typically are the ones that, every community is going to have churn rate, especially with open cart and not having like a cutoff amount of minimum time you can stay. Sure. We find that those people come and go really quickly. And that actually was our goal. We want this, in addition to our content that leads up before you join, to say, this is for me or this is not for me. If it's not for you, we have a very strict rule about not having people lurk in our space and witness other people's stories, experiences, and things like that they're not contributing to, because that takes away from the emotional safety. So I'm curious to hear Erica's thoughts, but looking at the numbers and the tech of it, the people that typically do not make it through more than 50% of the Start Here challenge don't stay. And that's exactly what we want, because they're not prepared to engage in the way that we would need them to.
I think it becomes another filter, because I think it helps to really kind of show like, okay, am I here just because I want to take, or am I here because I want to be a part of a community that I want to give and I want to receive? Am I here because I actually want to understand what it looks like to feel safe and to facilitate safety for others? Or do I not want to follow the rules? And so I'm just not going to. And sometimes it is just because that's a moment that you are not capable of doing it. So I want to acknowledge, particularly in the current like social climate, capacity is a thing. And so for some people, they don't have the capacity to hold space for others, which is fine. But it's worthwhile to acknowledge that this may not be the space for you right now. And so I think it's important to kind of have something in place that manages expectations and kind of not only what's expected of, you know, others toward you, but like, what is the role that you're playing? And so doing this helps for them to be able to cognizantly say yes, or to be able to cognizantly say, this is not for me right now. And I would much rather have that than to feel as though, you know, nobody really leaves the space, but the people that are in there are not fostering connections. They're not creating impact. They're not taking their, you know, relationships and dynamics and opportunities offline with each other. They're not sharing things with each other. And so in order to be able to get to that impact and what can happen, you need to make sure that the people in the space can do what needs to happen. And those that it's just not for at that moment, that they're not made to feel shame because they stayed and now they don't want to leave.
Yes. I couldn't have said that better. And I think that it goes back to looking at our intentions. That is always our intention to make sure that who we have feels safe and supported and like they're thriving in the space more so than it is to massively add new people in. We've been very grateful that our community has continued to grow. And a lot of that is from the people who are already there, sharing with their friends and their network. I know though, if you'd like, I can pull out and kind of give you some breakdown of what is in the Start Here Challenge and where the community manifesto sits in that process.
I think that'd be super helpful. And because we've talked about, you know, this intentionality from a new membership perspective. And as you go through that, India, I'd love if you could incorporate how someone with an existing membership, with an existing community could start, if they wanted to make a shift, but there's fear involved about like what, you know, number one, how to do it. And number two, like how this could affect their membership.
Well, before I let her do that, I want to point out something though. We moved from Facebook to Mighty Network. So we already had a format and had members and switched, not knowing what was going to happen because everybody could have been like, I'm not going over here. I'm out. I'm going back to the Book of Faces. And, you know, we actively created this while having it. True. From basically saying this is what we have, and then we evolved it. And so I want India to obviously go into those tangible pieces, but I want to acknowledge that we didn't start with all these pieces in place. And I think it's always important to remind anyone listening that things don't end up at their current iteration because this was your first iteration. That's why it's the current iteration. And so you have to give yourself that grace of understanding that you have learned some things, you've garnered some understanding, you've fostered some things that you want to do different by holding the space open and being like, let's see what happens here and experimenting a little bit. So I want to just preface that with everything that she's going to kind of share with you came from us really witnessing what was happening and being able to take that into how can we continue to grow this? How can we do this better? What's next? What else can we provide for them? How does this provide, ease for everybody involved? And so, because it's so easy to get stuck in that, like, I'm not there. I can't do it. I didn't do it before. And I just want to make sure that nobody gets stuck in that loop because that's not how we got here.
Agreed. And to explicitly lay that out, we were in Mighty Networks for probably a few months before we started building out our Start Here Challenge. And after we built the challenge I'm going to take you through, we required is such a strong word. So I'll say we requested gently and kept nudging our current members to go through the challenge. So it wasn't just for the the new people coming in. And I think that that's important, is if you decide to move in this direction, know that you can take your time building it out. You don't have to do it overnight. We certainly did not. It took us several months to plan this out. And then we did like a batch recording day of all the videos. And then once you've done that, you can gently nudge your current members to go through this challenge. And I think if you keep it fun, right, and you find the energy that they're looking for, but not making it feel like, oh, this is just one more thing to do that I'm required to do, they'll gladly go through that process. So when I think about our Start to Challenge, and there's a lot of options that you have in the way that you do it, so I want to be transparent about that. We did ours based on what our people needed to feel. Is we started out with an overview and an introduction, and that video and the content with that is laying out a reminder as to why you joined here. What was your intention that you had when you first signed up? You know, reiterating what's on the sales page. What do we talk about all the time? What happens in the space and the impact that it can have in your life and then the life of others. And of course, when you're changing things in your life, it's naturally going to change things in your business or in your workplace. And so that kind of overview just kind of reiterates that. It also goes through some housekeeping of accessibility things like closed captioning and how you can turn that on, how our videos are searchable to save you time and stuff like that. And from there, we go into several sections. We have Let's Get Started, which just goes over basic, here is where everything is. Think orientation at school, but for our network. We go through our community manifesto, which is right after that. And that's really setting the intentions of what's okay here. It also says what's not okay here, how this place got created, why we're here, you know, to create this judgment-free zone for conversation. What values influence our space is included there as well. And then we also have room for legal stuff because there's just kind of no way around that, which truly starts in the sign-up process of how you're agreeing to legal terms and conditions about not disclosing of anything in the community outside the community, as well as not having any hate speech or any discriminatory, Erica put in the word there. I'm looking for
if you discriminating against anyone by any type of societal indicators not limited to sex, age, gender, socioeconomic status, immigration status. The short answer is it'll get you kicked out.
Right.
So feel free to for anybody listening, pause that, go back, copy that down, add it to your terms and conditions. That's very well said.
And we reiterate that in the manifesto, because how many times do you agree to terms and conditions and then you're in a space and you forget what the those terms and conditions were once you're in it? So it's reiterated there in a more tight and more everyday language way. And we talk about all of those things in the manifesto before we get to introducing yourself. Don't introduce yourself until you know what's happening here and why, what's okay and what's not okay. And I think that I have seen that people who get to introduce yourself show up in a way that sets themselves up for success from day one in how they're greeted, how they are acknowledged, how they are communicated with from other members, whether or not they feel like they belong once they're there, because they've already gone through these other pieces. And we literally go through, like within Mighty Networks, there's a little section called introduction of like what you may want to put in that introduction. And not necessarily in telling them what they need to say about themselves, but just here's how this functions literally in a tech standpoint of once you fill this part of your profile out, it's going to make this why I'm here post introducing yourself where people can comment on it. And part of that is sharing, you know, a little bit about yourself, but also what you're hoping to gain from being in the space, because you are here for a reason.
I love, thank you for breaking that down. And I'm just thinking about it, remembering when I went through it and some of the things that I did too. So with that kind of onboarding and that kind of intentionality behind it, what would you, and I think we'll shift back over to Erica for this, what would you say to somebody who currently doesn't have this. They have a, what we'll call it a successful membership. Maybe it's an engaged membership, successful from a numbers perspective, but now they want to incorporate more of exactly what we're talking about here, deeper connections within the community, a safer space for everyone. They want to incorporate something like we're talking about here, this onboarding process. However, and have existing members go back through it. However, there's a fear of what people are going to think.
Right. Well, I think that if this is something that you want, you have to first acknowledge, do I want this type of outcome more than I want my feelings to be spared and people not wanting to be on board? Because people not wanting to be on board is going to feel like, well, what does this say about me? What does it say about my decision? What does it say about my space? So I think you have to decide first, is it your kind of feelings or how this reflects on you that is the priority, or is it the outcome? Because I think that there's always an opportunity for you to recognize that people either aren't on board simply because they don't like change, because sometimes that's a thing, or because the values that you're trying to really foster isn't maybe what they're there for. However, I think that we all kind of, we begin things with certain things in mind. And you start something 6 months in, you're like, I don't know if I want to do another 6 months of this. I don't want to know if I want to do another year, 2 years, 5 years of this. And so you decide it's time for things to change. There is always an opportunity of repelling some people because they're not meant to go for that ride. But there's no way to really draw in the people that are like, oh my God, thank you for doing this. Or the people that are like, oh, you're doing that. I want to come in here. I want this. There's no way of being able to even have the opportunity for that to happen if you're so fearful of what the outcome is going to be. Because basically you're like, I don't know what's going to happen. So therefore I'm going to assume it's going to be bad and I won't do anything.
Right.
And we all know that that's not how online business grows. That's not how you get the types of outcomes that you want, by essentially being so stuck in your risk aversion to an extent, because it's not the same kind of risk aversion that maybe feels like it's stuck to numbers, but it is. And I think it's important to really assess that. And then for me, it's really kind of threefold. It's, if you're going to do this, what are your values so that you can begin to anchor them in what's going to happen? And then using that to be able to be clear of like, okay, what do I want to foster here? What do I want to have happen? What do I want this to look like? And making sure that, is it about you? Is it about them? Like getting some clarity on that. But one thing that I don't see a lot of people doing is stepping back, like just really kind of moving back for a second and witnessing what is happening here. Because you can't change anything if you haven't gotten clear on what's actually happening. So that's where you do need your data. How are people interacting? What are the conversations that are continued? What are the conversations that are dropping off? What do people feel like they can or cannot talk about? What are they being present for? What are they looking to me for? What are they looking to each other for? Like there's a number of questions that can be asked, and you can actually go through and pay attention to what has historically been happening that I think needs to happen before you make changes. It's like being like, I want to change my diet, but you haven't taken the time to recognize like, wait, what was I eating that maybe I shouldn't eat? Or maybe what should I eat more of? You just decided it doesn't work. So let's just throw it all out and start again. That's not how this works. And that's how, to me, you get to burnout. Because now you've decided, oh, nope, I'm going to burn it all down and start again. That is overwhelm. That is burnout. That is taking the good ideas and the amazing things that you've created and throwing them away because you've allowed them to get caught in the things that maybe you don't want to do as much of.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just sitting here listening and just taking it all in. And I'm like, having these conversations that I'm having in this membership series I'm learning so much, way more than I thought I would, if I'm being honest. Right. And I just love these conversations that we're having to be honest, and we've talked about this, but thinking about things like member retention and creating a community and stuff like that through the lens of different ways to think about it. And it's so good. And more people need to, I think, need to be talking about this. And we all have talked about that these types of conversations need to be had more. There's absolutely more to increasing or decreasing churn rate or increasing retention and membership than adding an extra blank or whatever, or more content or whatever. So I want to invite anybody listening right now, if they're super jazzed about what they're hearing right now about, hey, I want to be a part of that community. And oh, by the way, see this onboarding process in action. What's the best place for them? We'll start there. What's the best place for them to go to learn more about the community?
You can come on over to the website, which is pawsontheplay.com. Pause on the Play is essentially India and I together. We are the two co-founders together. And again, we are the facilitators. We don't label ourselves as the leaders. But if you come on over and you go to pawsontheplay.com/community, you'll go to the sales page where you'll read a little bit about it. It's a little bit of an anti-sales page because it is not the typical sales page. There will not be the infinite scroll when you go there. But it will tell you a little bit about what happens in the space, and it'll tell you about the benefits. But some of my favorite pieces that are there, which we will have more of it once COVID lets us out, are some of the images that really were, when we were able to do things in person, and us being able to bring that type of energy online and into our space has been huge for us. So you'll be able to learn about the community as well as join today.
Awesome. And what are all the other various platforms to connect with you on? We have multiple podcasts. We have Instagram feeds. Talk to us. Where can people connect with you both?
So I would say the best way to kind of get warmed up to who we are and what we do together would be listening to the Pause on the Play podcast. We have wonderful conversations about everything values, visibility, and specifically diversity, equity, inclusion, and creating safer spaces for your team, for your coworkers, you name it there. You can listen to it whatever you're listening to this podcast. We're also on Instagram, but based on where we started this conversation of the social media sphere crashing.
Correct.
I'm going to recommend you go to the podcast first, but we're at Pause on the Play on Instagram.
Okay. And what is your podcast, India?
I also have Flaunt Your Fire, and that's where Erica and I dig into a lot more of the branding and visibility side of what we do together and how you're able to really approach that differently and really leave behind the shoulds in your marketing.
Yeah, which is really what we dove into on when you were on the show yourself, India, on that episode. I'll link everything up. I'll link the episode that I had with Erica, the episode with India, Pause and Play podcast, the community link, Flaunt Your Fire podcast. I'll link it all up on the show notes for today's episode. So I just really want to thank you both for coming back on. And also, again, because I've talked about it before, but publicly thank you both for all the work that you're doing with me and helping me navigate all of this. And I was just telling somebody yesterday, actually, here we are, we're recording this early October. It has absolutely been a year of growth. And this conversation, we're talking about like expanding the edges, if you will. And those edges are progressively going out further. And a big part of that is because of the work we've been doing. So thank you for all that.
Thank you, Rick.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for being willing to do it. Because you don't have to do it. A lot of people don't, and they're definitely not willing to publicly talk about it and the growth edges. And so for being willing to go on that ride and be willing to do it for yourself and to model what's possible to your listeners. I appreciate you. I have a lot of gratitude. Thank you.
Yeah. And it's, I will box you, Eric, and I'll say, this isn't easy, right? This is because it's not been easy. And you're like, right. Well, you don't have to do it. It's like, okay, yes, you're right. You're right.
But the beautiful thing that stands out to me is that even witnessing you and your journey, it's been one step at a time. And for someone who's listening, even if you're just thinking about starting with your onboarding, It's literally one step at a time, taking that one small action and then adding another action when you're ready to add another action.
Start with a survey. You put together a few questions and ask people. Yeah. And say, okay, I'm going to do that. Then take the information and then decide what's next. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Love it. Thank you both again. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Hey, my friends, if you are an established online course creator and or coach, or maybe you're a teacher entrepreneur and you want to be growing and scaling your online business to the next level, whatever that next level looks like for you, but maybe you're feeling stuck in your business. You're not really sure what next steps to take, things to be doing in your business in order to grow and scale your business. Maybe you're doing all the things and you're feeling overwhelmed, and maybe you're heading towards burnout, right? Maybe you just want to plan on how to grow your business without working longer and harder. Well, that is exactly what we help you do inside of our accelerator coaching program. This is about helping you create more profit, more impact with less hustle. Because my friend, this is not about working more hours, longer hours, and harder, etc. Right? This is about helping you get unstuck so that you stop spinning your wheels and you are creating the business that is ideal for you and helping the kind of people that you want to help while generating the revenue and profit that you want to be generating. If this sounds like something you're interested in, this is one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and a mastermind experience where we give you a growth plan that you follow step by step for your specific business. This is personalized coaching, right? And you're also surrounded by support, other coaching from the other members, and accountability. That is what embodies our accelerator coaching program. This is application only, and it is rolling, ongoing open enrollment. This is not open close, right? So if you want to learn more and apply, just go to rickmulready.com/accelerator. All right, my friends, thank you as always for tuning into the episode here today. Super appreciate you. Until next time, be well, and I'll chat with you soon.